The stars looked the same as they always had from the bridge of the Valkyrie observation ship. Commander Thexala stared at the blue and green planet below through the viewing screen. Earth spun slowly, unaware that alien eyes watched its every move. It had been exactly 100 years since the Valkyrie Empire first discovered this small world. 100 years of watching, learning, and preparing. Thexala remembered the stories his grandfather told him about the first scouting missions. Back then, the humans were just starting to leave their planet. They had crude rockets and simple space stations. Now in the year 2187, things were different. The humans had spread to Mars, built cities on the moon, and established mining operations throughout their solar system. But the Valkyrie had been watching all of it. War architect Nixoro walked onto the bridge. His purple skin showed the ritual scars of his rank, and his forearms moved with the precision that all Valkyrie warriors trained for their entire lives. He carried a data tablet containing the final invasion plans. "The Council has approved the assault," Nixoro announced. His voice was calm, like always. The Valkyrie never showed emotion during military operations. "We begin in 72 hours, Thexala nodded. "The humans still fight among themselves. Our intelligence shows 3 different wars happening on Earth right now. They will not be able to work together when we attack." This was true. The Valkyrie had studied human history carefully. Humans spent most of their time fighting each other. They had different countries, different religions, and different ideas about how to live. The Valkyrie Empire, by contrast, had been united under one government for over 3,000 years. On Earth, Captain Lee Daeho sat in his office at the Korean Space Defense Headquarters in Seoul. Outside his window, the city stretched to the horizon. Flying cars moved between the tall buildings, and transport ships flew overhead carrying goods to the orbital stations. Daeho was looking at reports that worried him. For the past month, his sensors had detected strange energy readings near Jupiter. The readings appeared for a few seconds, then disappeared. His computer analysis suggested they might be engine signatures. But no human ships were supposed to be in that area. He had sent his reports to Earth Defense Command, but they seemed more interested in the current crisis with the Mars colonies. The colonies wanted independence, and Earth wanted to keep control of the valuable mining operations. Politicians argued while soldiers prepared for another war. Dr. Park Min-hee was having similar problems getting attention for her discoveries. She worked at the Europa Research Station, studying the ice moon's potential for life. But lately she had been finding things that did not belong. Strange metal fragments buried in the ice. Energy readings that suggested advanced technology. When she ran tests on the metal, her equipment showed materials that did not exist in any human database. She tried to contact Earth about her findings, but the communication channels were busy with military traffic about the Mars situation. Back in space, the Valkyrie fleet prepared for the final phase of their century-long plan. 50,000 warships floated in formation beyond the edge of the solar system. Each ship carried weapons designed specifically to fight humans. The Valkyrie had studied every human war from ancient times to the present. They knew exactly how humans fought. Belcanis, the war coordinator, reviewed the battle plans one more time. The Valkyrie would attack Earth's major military bases first. Without their command centers, human forces would become confused and disorganized. Then the fleet would destroy the orbital defenses around Earth and Mars. Finally, ground troops would land in the major cities. The plan was perfect. The Valkyrie had run computer simulations thousands of times. In every simulation, they won the war in less than 6 hours. Human technology was primitive compared to Valkyrie weapons. Human military tactics were simple and predictable. Most importantly, humans would waste time arguing about who should be in command instead of fighting together. Commander Kim. Junwoo noticed the strange readings at the same time as Daeho. Kim worked on a military station orbiting Mars, watching for threats to the mining colonies. His job was usually boring, but today was different. His long-range scanners showed something large moving in the outer solar system. When he tried to get a better look, the object disappeared. It was like someone was using advanced stealth technology, but humans did not have stealth that good. Kim sent an urgent message to his commanding officer, General Han Seok-jin. The general was currently on Earth, trying to convince the different governments to work together against the growing Mars rebellion. Kim's message would have to wait. On Mars itself, Lieutenant Cho Hyeri was dealing with a different kind of problem. She commanded a small defense platform above the largest mining city. Her job was to watch for smugglers and pirates, but her sensors kept picking up things that should not be there. Small objects that moved too fast to be natural asteroids. Energy signatures that appeared and vanished without explanation. When she checked with other platforms, they reported similar readings. But when they sent ships to investigate, they found nothing. The Velkari observers smiled as they watched human confusion. Their stealth technology was working perfectly. The humans detected just enough to make them nervous, but not enough to understand the real threat. This was exactly what the Velkari wanted. Confused and worried humans would make even more mistakes than usual. War architect Nixoro reviewed the psychological profiles of key human leaders. Earth's governments were run by politicians who cared more about staying in power than protecting their people. The military leaders were skilled, but they had to follow orders from the politicians. When the attack came, the humans would waste precious time arguing about who was in charge. The Velkari way was much simpler. Nixoro gave orders and everyone followed them immediately. There was no discussion, no argument, and no delay. This was why the Velkari Empire controlled 47 star systems, while humans had not even left their home system. Captain Deho finally got a response to his reports about the strange energy readings. Earth Defense Command told him to stop worrying about space and ghosts and focus on the real threat from Mars. The politicians were convinced that the rebellious colonies were planning a military attack on Earth. Deho knew this was wrong. The Mars colonies had mining equipment and transport ships, not military fleets. But the politicians would not listen to military officers who disagreed with them. This was exactly the kind of human behavior that the Velkari expected. Dr. Park received an even worse response. The university that funded her research told her to stop wasting time on alien conspiracy theories and focus on finding water and minerals that could be useful for human expansion. When she insisted that her findings were important, they threatened to cut her funding. The Velkari had studied this pattern in human history. When humans discovered something that contradicted their existing beliefs, they often ignored it or tried to make it go away. Scientists who found inconvenient truths were often silenced by politicians and bureaucrats. This made humans easy to surprise, even when the evidence was right in front of them. As the final preparations were completed, Thexala felt confident about the coming battle. The Velkari had every advantage: better technology, superior tactics, unified command, and complete surprise. The humans were divided, distracted, and unprepared. In 72 hours, the century of watching would end. The war would begin, and when it was over, Earth would belong to the Velkari Empire. What none of the aliens realized was that humans had one quality that could not be measured by their careful observations. It was not something that showed up in their battle simulations or psychological profiles. It was not visible in human history books or military manuals. When humans were truly threatened, when their survival was at stake, they stopped following rules entirely. They became something that no amount of careful planning could predict or control. The Velkari were about to learn this lesson the hard way. Dr. Park Min-hee could not sleep. She stood in her laboratory on Europa Station, staring at the strange metal fragment under her microscope. For 3 weeks, she had been finding these pieces buried in the ice. Each one was made of materials that should not exist. The metal was harder than anything humans had ever created, but it was also flexible. It conducted electricity better than copper, but it did not rust or corrode. Most strange of all, it seemed to repair itself when damaged. Park had cut a small piece for testing, and by the next morning the fragment was whole again. Her research partner, Commander Kim Junwoo, arrived from Mars on the morning transport. His military station had detected the same energy signatures that were puzzling Park. Together they hoped to find answers. "Show me what you found," Kim said, as he floated into the laboratory. The low gravity on Europa made walking difficult, so most people used magnetic boots or simply floated from place to place. Park handed him the metal fragment. Kim examined it carefully, noting its unusual weight and texture. "This does not match any human technology I know," he said. "Where exactly did you find it?" "All over the station," Park replied. "Small pieces buried in the ice we mined for water. The computer analysis suggests they have been here for at least 6 months, maybe longer." Kim frowned. "6 months ago, my sensors started detecting those strange energy readings. If someone has been watching us, they might have left evidence behind. Neither of them knew that Velkari observation drones had been operating near Europa for decades. The metal fragments were pieces of damaged drones that had crashed into the ice moon. The Velkari thought they had collected all the wreckage, but they were wrong. On Earth, General Han Seokjin was fighting a different kind of battle. He sat in a conference room with representatives from 20 different countries. Each one wanted their military to be in charge if a real crisis occurred. The arguments had been going on for hours. The Korean Defense Force has the best space monitoring equipment, argued the representative from Seoul. We should coordinate all outer system defense. The American Space Navy has the most ships, countered the delegate from Washington. Command authority should rest with the largest force. The European Space Federation has the most advanced weapons, insisted the speaker from Brussels. Superior technology means superior leadership. Han listened to the arguments with growing frustration. He had been a soldier for 30 years, and he knew that divided command meant military disaster. But the politicians could not agree on anything. They were more worried about national pride than human survival. Meanwhile, the Velkari continued their final preparations. War Coordinator Velkanis reviewed the latest intelligence reports from his observation teams. The humans were behaving exactly as predicted. Their governments argued while their military forces remained scattered across the solar system. Lieutenant Cho Hyeri was beginning to piece together a disturbing pattern. From her position on the Mars orbital platform, she could see the entire outer solar system. Her sensors showed anomalies that appeared and disappeared in a regular pattern. It was like someone was running patrols checking on human activities. She had created a map showing where the strange readings occurred. When she connected the dots, they formed a perfect surveillance network around the solar system. Someone was watching everything humans did. Cho sent her analysis to Commander Kim on Europa. When Kim saw the map, he immediately shared it with Dr. Park. Together, they began to understand the scope of what they were facing. "This is not random," Park said, studying the patrol patterns. "Someone has been watching us systematically for a long time. The metal fragments I found might be evidence of their technology." Kim nodded grimly. "If they have been watching us, they probably know everything about our defenses, our weapons, and our military capabilities. When they decide to attack, they will have every advantage." The Velkari observers would have been alarmed to know that humans were discovering their surveillance network, but the alien monitoring systems were focused on military bases and government facilities. They were not watching 3 mid-level officers on remote stations. This was the Velkari's first mistake. They assumed that important discoveries would only be made by important people in important places. They did not understand that humans often solved problems through individual initiative and informal cooperation. Captain Lee Daeho finally received new orders from Earth Defense Command. Instead of investigating the energy anomalies he had reported, he was told to prepare for possible conflict with the Mars colonies. Politicians on Earth believed that the mining operations were planning to declare independence and seize control of the asteroid belt. Daeho knew this was wrong, but orders were orders. He began moving his ships into position to blockade Mars. As he did, he noticed something interesting. The strange energy readings were getting stronger and more frequent. It was like someone was getting excited about the human military movements. The Velkari were indeed excited. From their hidden observation posts, they watched human ships move into formation for what appeared to be a civil war. This was perfect for their plans. When the invasion began, human forces would already be positioned to fight each other instead of defending against external threats. War architect Nick Soro made final adjustments to the invasion timeline. The attack would begin during the peak of human military confusion. While Earth and Mars forces faced off against each other, Velkari ships would strike from the outer solar system. Dr. Park made a breakthrough in her analysis of the alien metal. She discovered that the fragments contained microscopic circuits that were still partially functional. With careful work, she was able to activate some of these circuits and decode the information they contained. What she found terrified her. The metal fragments were pieces of recording devices. They contained detailed scans of human technology, military formations, and defensive capabilities. Someone had been studying humanity with scientific precision for a very long time. Park immediately contacted Kim and Cho. When they saw the decoded information, They realized they were looking at invasion preparation materials. The surveillance network was not just watching humans for curiosity. It was gathering intelligence for an attack. "We need to warn Earth Defense Command," Kim said. "This proves that an alien force is preparing to invade." But when they tried to send their evidence to military headquarters, they ran into the same bureaucratic problems that had been frustrating them for weeks. The communication channels were busy with traffic about the Mars crisis. Their reports were delayed, filed, and forgotten. General Han was still trapped in political meetings when the first fragments of evidence reached his office. An aide handed him a datapad containing Park's analysis, but before he could read it, another argument broke out among the national representatives. The Velkari timing was perfect. Human attention was focused in the wrong direction. Their military forces were preparing to fight each other. Their leaders were paralyzed by political disagreement. Everything was proceeding exactly according to the century-long plan. Commander Thexala received confirmation that all observation posts were ready to provide real-time intelligence during the attack. 50,000 Velkari warships hung in space beyond the edge of the solar system, invisible to human sensors. Each ship carried weapons designed specifically to destroy human technology. The alien soldiers were ready too. They had trained for decades to fight in Earth's gravity and atmosphere. They knew the layout of every major human city. They understood human psychology and military tactics. When the ground invasion began, they would face no surprises. Lieutenant Cho made one last attempt to get attention for her discoveries. She used her emergency communication privileges to send a direct message to General Han, bypassing the normal chain of command. Her message was simple and urgent. "Alien surveillance network confirmed. Attack imminent. Request immediate military alert." The message reached Han just as the political meeting was ending. He read it quickly, then looked at the supporting evidence from Park and Kim. For the first time in weeks, the pieces of the puzzle started coming together. But it was too late. Even as Han began issuing orders to investigate the alien threat, Velkari ships were already moving into attack position. The century of preparation was over. The invasion was about to begin. The aliens had every advantage except one. They had studied human history, human technology, and human military doctrine. They had observed human behavior for 100 years. They thought they understood everything about their enemy, but they had never seen humans fighting for their lives. The attack began at exactly 0600 Earth Standard Time on a Tuesday morning. War architect Nick Zorro had chosen this moment carefully. According to Velkari intelligence, Tuesday was when human military efficiency was at its lowest point after the weekend rest period. The first wave of Velkari ships materialized out of stealth near Earth's orbital defense platforms. Their weapons charged with energy that could punch through any human shield technology. According to their battle plans, the orbital defenses would be destroyed within minutes. Admiral Song Tae-hyun was drinking his morning coffee in the command center of Luna Base when the alarms started screaming. His duty officer, a young woman named Lieutenant Park Ji-young, ran to his desk with a tablet showing sensor readings. "Admiral, we have 50 unknown contacts dropping out of stealth around Earth," she reported. "Energy signatures match nothing in our database. They are powering weapons." Song set down his coffee and looked at the tactical display. The alien ships were positioned exactly where human military doctrine said they should be, to achieve maximum surprise. But today was different. Today was the third day of the global defense exercise. Every human military unit in the solar system was already at battle stations. Every ship was powered up and ready for combat. Every soldier was awake and alert. The Velkari had attacked at the worst possible moment. "All units, this is not a drill," Song announced over the fleet communication system. "We are under attack by unknown hostile forces. Execute Emergency Protocol 7 immediately." Protocol 7 was something Song had developed during his years fighting pirates in the asteroid belt. It meant forget everything you learned in military school and fight like your life depends on it. Because it did. Captain Lee Dae-ho was leading a patrol squadron near Mars when the attack began. His sensors showed 12 Velkari fighters approaching in perfect formation. Their movement patterns matched classical Velkari military doctrine, which emphasized precise coordination and overwhelming firepower. But Dae-ho had not read the Velkari military manual. He ordered his pilots to break formation and attack individually. "Forget everything we practiced," he told them over the radio. "Make it up as you go along. The Valkyrie pilots were confused. According to their training, humans always fought in organized squadrons with predictable tactics. These humans were flying in random patterns that made no sense. Their computer targeting systems could not lock onto targets that behaved so irrationally. Daeho's ship dove straight at the alien formation, firing all weapons. This was not a standard human attack pattern. The Valkyrie had prepared for careful, methodical human tactics. They were not ready for a single fighter to charge directly into their formation like a berserker. The lead Valkyrie ship exploded as Daeho's missiles struck its shields at an angle that their computer model said was impossible. The other alien pilots tried to adjust their formation, but Daeho's wingman, Captain Yoon Min-seok, attacked from a completely different direction using mining lasers instead of military weapons. Dr. Park Min-hee watched the battle from Europa Station with growing amazement. The alien ships were obviously superior to human technology, but they seemed unable to deal with human unpredictability. Every time they tried to establish a formation, human fighters would do something that broke their tactical algorithms. Commander Kim Jun-woo had been right about the alien surveillance network. The Valkyrie knew everything about human military capabilities, but they had made one crucial error. They assumed humans would fight the way their military manual said they should fight. On Earth, General Han Seok-jin activated the Planetary Defense Network, but instead of following standard protocol, he gave every unit commander complete freedom to make their own tactical decisions. This created chaos, but it was chaos that the aliens could not predict or counter. Sergeant Lim Soo-young was defending the Seoul spaceport when Valkyrie ground troops landed. The aliens dropped from their ships in perfect formation, using tactics designed to overwhelm human defensive positions. They had studied every human ground battle for the past century, but Soo-young had grown up in the slums of Seoul, where survival meant fighting dirty. She ignored her military training and used everything she had learned on the streets. Instead of holding a defensive line, she ordered her soldiers to scatter and attack from unexpected directions. The Valkyrie ground troops were equipped with the best armor their technology could provide. Their weapons could penetrate any human fortification. Their tactics were flawless according to military science, but they had never faced enemies who used construction equipment as weapons. Soo-young commandeered a plasma excavator from a nearby construction site. The machine was designed to cut through rock and metal, but it worked just as well on alien armor. When she drove the excavator straight into the Valkyrie formation, their tactical computers crashed trying to process what was happening. Lieutenant Cho Hyeri was trapped on her orbital platform when Valkyrie ships surrounded it. According to their battle plans, she should have surrendered or tried to hold her position until reinforcements arrived. Instead, she did something that no Valkyrie computer model had ever considered. She turned off the platform's artificial gravity and life support, then opened all the airlocks. The station became a spinning, airless death trap filled with floating debris. When Valkyrie boarding troops tried to enter, they found themselves fighting in an environment that their training had never prepared them for. Cho used the chaos to her advantage. She moved through the station in a spacesuit, using maintenance tools to sabotage alien equipment. A simple welding torch became a devastating weapon against electronics that were designed to resist military-grade pulse rifles. War Coordinator Valkanis watched his perfect battle plan fall apart in real time. His tactical computers were reporting impossible events. Human forces were using civilian equipment as weapons. Military units were ignoring chain of command and acting independently. Worst of all, human fighters were winning battles they should have lost. The Valkyrie had spent a century learning human military doctrine, but doctrine meant nothing when humans refused to follow it. Every simulation had assumed that humans would fight logically and predictably. The reality was chaos beyond any computer model. Commander Thexala frantically tried to adapt his formations to counter human tactics, but every adjustment was met with something even more unpredictable. Human ships rammed alien vessels instead of engaging in proper combat. Ground troops used civilian vehicles as weapons. Orbital platforms turned themselves into spinning death traps. Admiral Song coordinated the defense from Luna Base, but his orders were simple. Do whatever works. Ignore everything else. This created a military nightmare from the perspective of organized warfare, but it was effective against an enemy that had prepared for organized resistance. The Valkyrie had one more surprise waiting for them. As their assault faltered, they expected human reinforcements to arrive following standard military protocol. Instead, civilian ships began joining the battle, mining vessels armed with industrial lasers, transport ships loaded with construction explosives, even passenger liners whose captains had decided to ram alien warships. The Valkyrie faced an entire solar system that had spontaneously militarized itself. Dr. Park left her laboratory and joined a group of scientists who were building improvised weapons from research equipment. A particle accelerator designed to study subatomic physics made an excellent anti-ship cannon. Atmospheric processors could be modified to create toxic gas clouds that disabled alien sensors. The Valkyrie retreat began just 8 minutes after the attack started. Their casualties were mounting rapidly, and their tactical computers could no longer provide useful guidance. War architect Nick Soro made the decision that saved the remnants of his fleet. All units withdraw immediately, he ordered. Abort the invasion. Return to the rally point for emergency regrouping. Captain Deho pursued the retreating alien ships, but Admiral Song ordered him to let some escape. They need to tell their friends what happened here, Song explained. Word needs to spread that humans are not easy prey. The invasion was over in 12 minutes and 37 seconds of actual combat. A century of preparation had been destroyed by human refusal to fight according to the rules. The Valkyrie had learned a painful lesson about the difference between studying an enemy and understanding them. As the alien ships disappeared into hyperspace, General Han surveyed the aftermath. Human casualties were surprisingly light, considering they had faced a technologically superior enemy. The key to victory had been humanity's greatest weakness, their inability to follow orders when survival was at stake. The Valkyrie would return to their empire with news of a species that could not be conquered through conventional means. Humans were too chaotic, too unpredictable, and too willing to use anything as a weapon. The galaxy would learn to fear this small blue planet and its irrational inhabitants. But for now, humans celebrated their unexpected victory and began preparing for whatever might come next. War architect Nick Soro stared at the tactical display with growing horror. Half of his invasion fleet was gone, destroyed by an enemy that refused to follow any logical pattern of warfare. The remaining Valkyrie ships hung in space beyond the edge of the solar system, their crews confused and demoralized. "Explain to me how this happened," Nick Soro demanded of his tactical officer. "We prepared for every possible human response. Our computer models ran 10 million battle simulations. In every single one, we achieved victory within 6 hours." The tactical officer, a young Valkyrie named Ketharos, checked his instruments again. "Sir, the humans are not following their own military doctrine. Our intelligence was accurate about their capabilities, but they are using their equipment in ways that make no sense." On the main screen, they watched human forces pursuing the retreating Valkyrie ships. But instead of organized squadrons, the humans moved in loose groups that changed formation constantly. Some ships flew alone. Others clustered together for no apparent tactical reason. It was chaos, but somehow it was working. Commander Kim Jun-woo led one of these pursuit groups. His orders from Admiral Song were simple: chase them and cause trouble. Kim interpreted this creatively. His ships spread out across the outer solar system, appearing at random locations to harass any Valkyrie vessels they found. The aliens could not predict where Kim would strike next, because Kim did not know either. He made decisions based on instinct rather than strategy. When his sensors detected a Valkyrie supply ship, he attacked immediately instead of calling for reinforcements or waiting for orders. Dr. Park Min-hee had abandoned her scientific research to join the war effort. She worked with a team of engineers to analyze captured Valkyrie technology. What they found was impressive but inflexible. Every alien system was designed for specific functions with no room for improvisation. "Look at this," Park told her colleague Dr. Cho Young-ho. She held up a Valkyrie weapon that they had taken from a destroyed ship. "This energy rifle is more powerful than anything we have, but it can only fire in 3 predetermined modes. Our weapons are weaker, but we can modify them for different situations." Cho examined the alien device. "Their technology is like their tactics. Very advanced but very rigid. They build things to work perfectly under expected conditions. When conditions change, their equipment becomes useless. This was exactly what was happening in the battle. Velkari weapons were designed to fight human technology as it existed during their century of observation. But humans had started modifying their equipment the moment the battle began. Lieutenant Cho Hyeri had turned her damaged orbital platform into a weapon factory. Using spare parts and mining equipment, her crew built missiles that looked like floating debris until they activated near enemy ships. The Velkari sensors could not distinguish these improvised weapons from normal space junk. Human creativity is their most dangerous weapon, Cho told her team as they welded rocket engines onto metal containers filled with explosives. The aliens studied our official weapons for 100 years, but they never saw anything like this. Her improvised missiles were crude compared to proper military hardware, but they worked. More importantly, the Velkari had no defense against weapons that did not exist in any human military database. General Han Seokjin coordinated the global defense from his command bunker deep beneath Seoul, but his coordination was unlike anything in military textbooks. Instead of giving detailed orders, he simply told unit commanders what needed to be accomplished and let them figure out how to do it. This drove the Velkari tactical computers insane. They were programmed to analyze enemy command structures and predict responses based on organizational hierarchy. When every human unit acted independently, the alien computers could not process the information fast enough to be useful. Sergeant Lim Soo-young was fighting house-to-house battles in the streets of Seoul. The Velkari ground troops had superior armor and weapons, but they moved in formations designed for open battlefield combat. The narrow streets and tall buildings of the city created an environment their training had not prepared them for. Soo-young used every advantage the urban environment provided. Her soldiers attacked from rooftops, sewers, and subway tunnels. They used fire trucks to spray alien troops with chemical foam that disabled their electronic equipment. They dropped construction materials from tall buildings to crush enemy vehicles. The Velkari soldiers were brave and well-trained, but they could not adapt to this kind of warfare. Their tactical doctrine required clear lines of battle and predictable enemy positions. Street fighting was chaos, and chaos was something their military philosophy could not handle. Captain Lee Daeho discovered that alien ships had another weakness. Their shields were designed to deflect energy weapons and kinetic projectiles, but they were not prepared for ships that deliberately collided with them. Ramming attacks were considered suicide tactics that logical species would avoid, but humans were not always logical. When Daeho's fighter was damaged and running low on ammunition, he simply flew it directly into the nearest Velkari ship. His ejection pod was picked up by friendly forces 20 minutes later, and the alien vessel was destroyed. This tactic spread throughout the human fleet without any official orders. Pilots whose ships were damaged began using them as guided missiles. Transport captains rammed alien vessels when they ran out of conventional weapons. Even civilian ships joined these suicide attacks. The Velkari could not understand this behavior. Their own soldiers would never waste valuable equipment and risk their lives for such marginal tactical gains. But humans seemed to view their ships as expendable tools rather than precious resources. War Coordinator Velkanis tried desperately to adapt his strategies to counter human unpredictability. He ordered his ships to maintain greater distance from human forces to prevent ramming attacks. But this reduced the effectiveness of Velkari weapons and gave humans more time to improvise defenses. He tried to concentrate his forces for overwhelming attacks on specific targets. But human units refused to stand and fight where the aliens expected them to be. They scattered when faced with superior forces, then regrouped elsewhere to attack vulnerable targets. Most frustrating of all, humans kept changing their tactics without warning. Just when Velkari computers learned to counter one human strategy, the humans would abandon it and try something completely different. It was like fighting an enemy that learned faster than any computer could calculate. Admiral Song watched the battle from Luna Base with professional interest. As a career military officer, he knew that the human tactics being used were terrible by conventional standards. No military academy would teach soldiers to fight this way. But they were winning, and that was all that mattered. "Sir, the Velkari fleet is requesting permission to withdraw," reported Lieutenant Park. "They are offering to negotiate a ceasefire." Song considered this. The alien fleet was defeated but not destroyed. If they escaped, they would return to their empire with valuable information about human capabilities. On the other hand, Letting them go would send a message to other potential enemies. Grant them safe passage out of the solar system, Song decided. But make sure they know we could have destroyed them all if we wanted to. Fear is better than hatred when dealing with enemies who have superior technology. The retreat became a rout, as Velkari ships fled toward the edge of the solar system. Human forces pursued them, but did not try to prevent their escape. Instead, they focused on capturing alien technology and prisoners who could provide intelligence about the Velkari Empire. Dr. Park led the teams analyzing captured equipment. What they found confirmed her earlier theories about alien technology. The Velkari had superior materials and energy sources, but their systems were designed for specific functions. Human technology was cruder but more adaptable. We can learn from this, Park told General Han during a briefing. Their energy weapons use principles we do not understand, but their computer systems are actually more primitive than ours. They rely on programmed responses instead of true artificial intelligence. This explained why Velkari tactics had failed so completely. Their battle computers could only respond to situations they had been programmed to handle. When humans did something unexpected, the alien systems simply could not adapt. Commander Thexala made the final decision to abandon the invasion. His fleet had lost 60% of its ships and most of its ground forces. The survivors were demoralized and confused. Worst of all, they had learned nothing useful about how to defeat humans in future battles. Set course for home, he ordered. We will report to the Council that humans cannot be conquered through conventional military action. They are too chaotic to predict and too adaptable to counter. As the last Velkari ships disappeared into hyperspace, humans throughout the solar system began to celebrate. They had won a victory that should have been impossible. They had defeated an enemy with superior technology and centuries of preparation. But the real lesson of the battle was simpler than anyone realized. Humans had not won because they were stronger or smarter than their enemies. They had won because they were willing to abandon everything they knew when survival was at stake. The Velkari would return to their empire with a new understanding of humanity. This small, chaotic species could not be conquered through car. The last Velkari ship vanished into hyperspace exactly 12 minutes and 37 seconds after the invasion began. High Commander Thexala sat in his command chair, staring at the tactical display that showed the destruction of his fleet. A century of preparation had been destroyed in less time than it took to drink a cup of coffee. War Architect Nick Zorro stood beside him, his forearms hanging limp with defeat. How do we explain this to the Council? He asked. They will demand to know how 50,000 ships were defeated by a primitive species that has not even left its home system. Thexala considered the question. The truth was almost impossible to believe. The humans had not defeated them through superior technology or brilliant strategy. They had won by refusing to fight like civilized beings. They had turned warfare into chaos, and chaos had triumphed over order. We tell them the truth, Thexala finally said. Humans cannot be conquered because they cannot be understood. They do not follow the rules that govern rational warfare. Any species that attacks them will face enemies who use everything as a weapon and fight without logic. On Earth, Admiral Song received damage reports from across the solar system. Human casualties were surprisingly light considering they had faced a technologically superior enemy. The orbital platforms had suffered the worst damage, but even they could be repaired within a few months. More importantly, humans had captured significant amounts of Velkari technology. Dr. Park Min-hee led teams of scientists who were already reverse engineering alien weapons and ships. What they learned would advance human technology by decades or possibly centuries. Captain Lee Daeho landed his damaged fighter on Luna Base and walked to the command center. His ship had been hit by alien weapons, but he had managed to destroy 3 enemy vessels before running out of ammunition. When he reported to Admiral Song, he had a suggestion. "Sir, we should let word spread about what happened here," Daeho said. "The aliens will go back to their empire and tell everyone about us. Other species will think twice before attacking Earth if they know we fight like this." Song nodded. This was exactly what he had been thinking. Fear would protect humanity better than any weapon or shield. If the galaxy believed that humans were too dangerous to attack, Earth would be safe from future invasions. General Han Seokjin emerged from his command bunker to survey the damage in Seoul. The Velkari ground assault had been brief but intense. Several buildings were destroyed and the spaceport would need extensive repairs. But the city had survived, and its people were already working to rebuild. Sergeant Lim Soo-young approached him with a report on the ground battle. Her unit had suffered casualties, but they had eliminated every Valkyrie soldier who landed in their sector. The alien troops had been well-equipped and well-trained, but they could not adapt to urban warfare. The aliens fought like they were following a textbook, Soo-young explained. They expected us to hold defensive positions and fight in organized formations. When we scattered and attacked from unexpected directions, their tactics fell apart. Han understood what she meant. The Valkyrie had studied human military history, but history only showed how humans fought when they had time to plan and organize. It did not show how they fought when survival was at stake and planning was impossible. Commander Kim Jong-woo brought his pursuit squadron back to Mars Station with captured alien equipment and 3 Valkyrie prisoners. The prisoners were kept in secure detention while human doctors tried to understand their biology and psychologists attempted to learn about their culture. What they discovered was troubling. The Valkyrie were not evil or cruel. They were simply a highly organized species that believed in careful planning and efficient execution. Their invasion of Earth had been a rational decision based on accurate intelligence about human capabilities. But their rationality had been their weakness. They could not comprehend a species that abandoned logic when faced with extinction. They could not predict the actions of beings who treated every tool as a potential weapon, and every rule as a suggestion. Dr. Park published her analysis of Valkyrie technology for the human scientific community. The aliens had achieved remarkable advances in materials science and energy generation, but their computer systems were actually more primitive than human artificial intelligence because they relied on predetermined programming rather than adaptive learning. This explains why they could not counter our tactics, Park wrote in her report. Their battle computers were designed to analyze known enemy behaviors and select appropriate responses. When we did things that were not in their database, their systems could not adapt. Lieutenant Cho Hyeri supervised the repair of her orbital platform, while also studying captured alien equipment. The Valkyrie weapons were powerful but inflexible. They could be set to different power levels, but they could not be modified for new purposes like human equipment could. She demonstrated this to a group of military engineers by comparing a Valkyrie energy rifle to a human plasma cutter. The alien weapon was more powerful, but it could only function as designed. The human tool could be modified to serve as a weapon, a cutting instrument, or even a welding device. Adaptability is our greatest strength, Cho explained. We can take any piece of equipment and find a new way to use it. The aliens build things to work perfectly for specific purposes, but they cannot improvise when conditions change. The Valkyrie survivors reached their home system and reported to the Empire Council. The news of their defeat spread quickly through Valkyrie space and beyond. Within months, every major species in the galaxy had heard about the humans who destroyed an invasion fleet in 12 minutes. The reaction was not what humans might have expected. Instead of planning revenge, most species decided to avoid contact with Earth entirely. The galaxy was full of worlds that could be conquered through conventional warfare. Why risk fighting beings who seem to have no concept of rational military strategy? War architect Nick Zorro submitted his final report to the Valkyrie Council. It contained detailed analysis of human tactics and recommendations for future interactions with Earth. His conclusions were simple and stark. Humans represent a form of intelligent life that operates outside normal parameters, he wrote. They cannot be defeated through superior technology because they use inferior technology in superior ways. They cannot be outmaneuvered because they do not follow predictable patterns. They cannot be conquered because they transform every defeat into a tactical advantage. His recommendation was equally direct. The Valkyrie Empire should establish a no-contact zone around the human solar system. Any interaction with this species should be avoided unless absolutely necessary. They are too dangerous to fight and too unpredictable to negotiate with safely. The Council accepted his recommendations. Within a year, the entire region around Earth was marked as a hazard zone on galactic navigation charts. Trade routes were rerouted to avoid the human system. Exploration missions were forbidden from approaching too closely. Admiral Song received these intelligence reports with satisfaction. Earth had achieved something that most civilizations spent centuries trying to accomplish: recognition as a species too dangerous to threaten. The 12-minute war had established human reputation throughout the galaxy. But Song also understood that this reputation came with responsibilities. Humans would need to be careful about how they used their newfound status. Other species would be watching to see if the chaotic tactics that defeated the Velkari were a fluke or a fundamental aspect of human nature. General Han began planning for Earth's future defense needs. The captured Velkari technology would help humans build better weapons and ships, but more importantly, the battle had shown that human adaptability was their greatest asset. Future military training would emphasize improvisation and creative thinking over rigid doctrine. Dr. Park continued her research into alien technology while also studying the broader implications of first contact. Humans now knew they were not alone in the universe, but they also knew that other species viewed them as unpredictable and dangerous. "We have become the galaxy's wild card," she wrote in her personal journal. "Other civilizations will avoid us not because we are weak, but because they cannot predict what we will do. This gives us tremendous power, but also tremendous responsibility." Captain Deho was promoted to admiral and given command of Earth's first interstellar exploration fleet. His mission was to make peaceful contact with other species, while also demonstrating that humans could be reasonable neighbors when treated with respect. But he carried orders to be prepared for anything. If other species decided to test human resolve, they would discover that the 12-minute war was not an accident. Humans would fight just as fiercely against any threat to their survival. The Velkari Empire recovered from their defeat, but they never forgot the lesson they learned at Earth. They became advocates for avoiding contact with humans, warning other species about the dangers of underestimating such an unpredictable enemy. Years later, when young Velkari military officers asked about the invasion of Earth, their instructors would tell them about the 12 minutes that changed galactic politics forever. They would explain how a century of careful preparation was destroyed by an enemy that refused to fight by the rule.